back on that date. Now, if you look at those characters, they just arrived from the Northern Hemisphere. They're dressed in those woolen clothes. It's the middle of summer, and they've just chopped down a couple of really hard trees. They could be forgiven if thinking climate change was really going to take some adapting to. Sydney's first urban agriculture occurred. That's the key. That's the tank stream running north-south, which was a major factor in determining which direction Sydney was going to, the orientation of Sydney. At the bottom is the east and the top is the west. The governor and the elitists lived on the eastern side, and the convicts and the military lived on the western side. And a lot of people think nothing much has changed over time, but particularly those in the eastern suburbs anyway. The first farm was, and I live in the northwest, so I'm sort of, yeah, somewhere there. The first farm was at the Botanical Gardens, and of course farming wasn't successful because of the soils. But the official purpose of the colony was a closely supervised, harsh, non-urban subsistence agrarian settlement. It didn't really work because Sydney became a hotspot for wealth and greed and rum and whatever else. And this fellow here has got to take a lot of responsibility for that. He took over from Philip when Philip fell ill after a couple of years. And it was during that time that the template, in my opinion, for the way Sydney has developed over the years, the rich and the influential, the military, were able to gain the upper hand in terms of how Sydney was going to develop. And in some people might think that nothing's really changed. But now, I didn't say that, but some people think it. When Macquarie came, he came in response to the fact that Bligh had come out, and Bligh arrived in 1806. He lasted 2 years. He tried to wrest a lot of the power back from the military and the powerful, and of course we had Australia's first and only military coup. But Macquarie came, and he realised that he had to harness what already exists. The powerful were in place, and he had to harvest that for the public good. And in terms of agriculture, I mean, Sydney was really struggling. Food security was a major issue, and a major strategic intervention of his was the establishment of the 5 Macquarie towns in 1810 in the northwest. That's the Sydney Basin. It's pretty obvious that it is a basin, and of course at that time and right up until perhaps the 1940s, 1950s, it was very much a significant food bowl for the colony. The urbanisation of Sydney, the 1950s, due to the time constraint, I couldn't bring it all forward, but we'll start from the 50s, and you had the post-war immigration, and then by the 1980s, agricultural land in Sydney was regarded as lands waiting higher economic development. You had the 1990s, rural lands were rural lifestyles were overtaking farming lands. The McMansions and the orbital roads completed, and so the urbanisation of Sydney continues with the projected 6 million people. Partners in urbanisation are the supermarkets and the fast food industry, and the consequences of these affect 2 key constituencies, and they are farming and community health. Farming is pressure from urban development and the market structures. The supermarket system has really dominated and is destroying whole communities. Rural communities are based around small farming in Sydney and elsewhere across Australia. In terms of community health, there was pressure from the food system and the health impacts. That's the fast food system. Also, in terms of farming and community health, suffering from financial distress and generational crisis, and suffering from supply security, safety, quality and access and sustainability. The second significant strategic intervention occurred in 1998, and it was the release of this document by the then Minister for Agriculture, Minister Amory in May of 1998, a strategic plan for sustainable agriculture in the Sydney region. There was a gap between Macquarie's intervention and strategic establishment of those 5 Macquarie towns to this document, when the only time that agriculture was really recognised at a strategic level in the Sydney region. There was a number of things happening in the 1990s that really sort of started to have an impact on bringing this whole issue forward. And one of them was the Agenda 21 that came out of the 1992 convention or conference in Rio de Janeiro. That was at a global level. During the 1990s, the city of Hawkesbury were doing a number of studies, Our City, Our Future, and one of the major reasons that people wanted to live in Hawkesbury was because of the rural amenity and, of course, the relationship between rural amenity and agriculture. And there's also a Hawkesbury food program that was part of that. That came out of a project that Tony and I were involved with, the Penrith Food Program. And then that was at a local level. And then at the regional level was the Sydney Region Sustainable Agriculture Strategy. Now, that was in 1998. That strategy actually really had an impact in the bureaucracy, mainly. It was a 5-year consultation process. We had to take them from not thinking that agriculture had any place in the Sydney Basin to actually starting to really think about it. We started a program called the Hawkesbury Harvest, which came out of the Hawkesbury Food Program, and that was based on agri-tourism and farmers markets, direct marketing, and that engaged with the local community or the Sydney community, and has been a very successful. If you want to really find out what Hawkesbury Harvest is about, just Google it. It's a fantastic website and doing very well. In terms of what urban agriculture is, that's the continuum of urban agriculture. It's just from the social, the backyard, the community gardens, rooftop, school ag plots, into the sort of the enterprising with small farms where people can actually, have a hobby, or they can sell from the farm gate. Then you've got your floodplain, your market gardens, and so forth. And then you get right down here to your bottom, which is high tech, which is about jobs and profit. So there's huge range of capacity. And really, agriculture in the urban environment needs to be thought of as a strategic resource in respect to these different things. I won't say them, you can read them. I mean, it's multifunctional. Now, in 2006, I did a Churchill study tour, and the trends that I found, I went to the Northern Hemisphere basically, where it's all happening. These are the international trends. Local food's an international trend. Canada is a major trend. Direct marketing, such as farmers markets, pick your own, and those kind of things. Innovation and adaptability. That's a concept in Singapore. That the connection between the buildings is farming, temperate crops, and of course the public health urban agriculture relationship that is taken about a kilometre from the centre of Vancouver. The situation in terms of, am I going, Tony? Okay, I can do it. The current world population, 6.9, it's going to peak at 9 million by 2050. Increase of 2 billion equates to 60 to 70 million people per year. We produce as much food to feed that number in Australia every year. So the world has to, for the next 50 years or so, has to produce as much food extra per year as does Australia. So it's a pretty tall order. The situation in perspective, this was said by Dr. Megan Clark, and you can read that. And it's extraordinary to think that we're going to have to produce that much food. The situation in terms of the issues, cheap oil drives our agriculture at the moment, and of course they're also going to get more expensive. Our natural resource base is declining. Low food prices do not include the environmental costs. and so forth. There's demand for biofuels will compete for lands to grow, and certainty of production will be impacted by climate change. The situation of the climate, CSIRO modelling predicts that despite the floods of recent, that the Murray-Darling Basin is going to have reduced rainfall and so forth, and reduced runoff. And that drought we just come out of is the third such drought in 115 years. I took over that program with the Department of Ag, the drought support worker program, and it started raining the day after I took it over. So my performance indicators are looking really good. And I was born in 1942, and I broke the drought then too, I can say. Anyway, I'm making you laugh, so you let me have a few more extra minutes. Yes, this is the project, basically. This, in my opinion, is the third intervention. Macquarie, the strategic plan, and this project, I believe, will have a major impact upon the urban agriculture of Sydney. I don't think you need to learn it. You're going to hear a bit more about it at the launch in a few minutes. In terms of some of the work that, apart from the paper that we've written, some really good practical stuff that's actually engaged with the community has been the contested landscapes of Western Sydney. John Reid of the ANU Arts School has led this. The partners have been his group, or his school, the New South, the TAFE at Meadowbank, the National Research Flagship, Hawkesbury Harvest. Purple Noon is a gallery at in the Hawkesbury, as is Sassafras Creek. So that's been very successful. If people want to have a look at that, I'll pass it around. Yeah. I was going to bring some more, but my luggage, I just couldn't fit it in. Okay, yeah, it's worth having a look at. Some terrific art there about the contest between urban and agriculture in Sydney Basin. Now, in terms of sustainability requirements, in my experience, from the years I've put in on this, these are the things that are absolutely essential. One of the major things I didn't mention in terms of what's happening overseas, they actually are planning to retain their agriculture. There's been a lot of talk about it in Australia, but nothing's happened. We did actually, under the Labor government in New South Wales, in the review of the Metro strategy at the end of last year, actually urban agriculture or peri-urban agriculture actually got a significant mention as being a very important thing to maintain. We've got new government, and I guess we now have to go through an education process in that regard. Yeah. So, thank you.